Have you heard of the idea of matrescence? This is the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition to becoming a mother. And if you are on the cusp of that transition, if you are midway through it, or perhaps you feel that you're coming through it, we'll see. This is an episode for you. I'm talking to Katherine Hale, whose business is built on supporting women through this transition, something that perhaps isn't so often talked about, and her business Thrive in Motherhood. And in the episode, we, of course, dig into this idea of matrescence, what it is, and how to cope, how to manage, how to thrive, but also the pivotal moments in Katherine's career. So she started with a decade in the army. She then transitioned into working in a big consultancy firm, and now most recently has built her own business. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Happy listening. Reimagining Success, episode 266. You're listening to the Reimagining Success podcast, where we help you design a business and a life that allows you freedom from the 9 to 5. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, ex-corporate good girl, now a business mentor and coach, author, mum of 2, and I'm here to help you create more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Now let's get started with redefining success outside of the 9 to 5. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to this month's episode, which is, as ever, an interview. And I'm here with Katherine Hale, who I met just a couple of weeks ago at a workshop. Very exciting for me because I rarely leave the house for work these days. It's been a long time since I did in person, and I'm really enjoying meeting people. And one of those people is Katherine. So, Katherine, I'd love to start by asking you, and it's a complex question, so try to answer it briefly because we will dig into the detail. But I suppose give us a brief career history of what you've been doing in the past and then what you're doing today, and then we'll dig into all the really fascinating pivots that you've made.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast to start with. So my career started back after university. I went into the army. I did 10 years in the Royal Signals, leading on the communications IT side of life. Absolutely loved everything I did while serving. Deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and they were both fantastic opportunities. But realised very quickly in the army that I didn't want to be married in the army or have children in the army. So I got to around the 30 mark, and I decided, well, I've always wanted to work in the city. I'd always wanted to do an MBA. So I left the army to do a full-time MBA with the view of going into consulting. And I spent the last 10 years working for one of the big 4 consultancy firms as a transformation director, leading change and big, large-scale corporate transformations in the government sector. Absolutely love change, love leading change, influencing and supporting leaders through change. But realised after the birth of my 3rd child a couple of years ago that life as a overworked management consultant in London wasn't really conducive with the life that I wanted to lead. And certainly living an hour and a half out of London, with obviously the travel time, the pressures of a relatively senior role at work, I was like, no, I need to do something different. So I'd always had an interest in business. It was my favourite subject at GCSE. I have always had an entrepreneurial streak. And I thought I actually have wanted to set up my own business. So about 2 years ago, I started thinking about what I could do, what it would look like. And I realised that my strengths were in leading change and influencing and supporting people through that change. Coaching, which I qualified as a coach 12 years ago. And as a mum of 3, I had a big interest in the motherhood space. And I learned about the word matrescence about 2 years ago, which is the transition from woman to mother. And I was like, there is a gap here to support women as they transition into that motherhood role. And I wanted to fill that gap and support women thrive, basically, both personally and professionally, in whatever guise that looks like, whether it's a career mum, a stay-at-home mum, or a mum who's just, reassessing their options. And so I started my coaching practice literally a year ago, this month, called Thrive in Motherhood. And I support women as they transition into motherhood. Reconnecting with themselves, trying to reprioritize themselves and giving themselves time to focus on what they want and need, and sort of help them better manage their emotions and all the stresses and strains that come with spinning plates and juggling multiple hats.
Well, congratulations, first of all, on your year. That's amazing. I mean, it's already putting you in a minority that you survived past the first year, not to be too cynical about these things, but that's fantastic and exciting to see where you go. And it sounds like you've made some really smart, intentional moves. I'm curious, if we start with the first one, when you went into the army, and 10 years is I suppose, quite a long time. I don't know, what is the average length of time people spend serving usually, would you say?
A full career is considered 16 years as an officer. But a lot of people do get out between the sort of 6 and 10 year mark. They get out because it is not just leaving a job, it's a change of lifestyle.
Because funny enough, I worked at Procter & Gamble, and the average tenure was, I think it was like 7 years and 7 months or something, and that was the exact time that I left. So I was very average in my change. But I suppose first, going into the army, what was your definition of success? Were you planning on staying there for 16 years at the beginning? How did you see that decade, I guess, ahead of time?
To be honest, I didn't know. I'd always wanted to join the army. I'm from an army family. I'm the 5th generation to join, and my husband's serving at the moment. I just knew I wanted to commission. I wanted to walk up the steps at Sandhurst, feel proud to serve my country. I'm an adventure seeker, so I wanted to travel. I wanted to have the opportunities that the army does give a young officer. And I didn't think it was going to be a dull career. I thought, the opportunities would be fantastic. And the leadership opportunities, obviously, you get are amazing. Leading a troop of 30 soldiers, aged 22, you don't get that experience in a civilian job. So I think it sets you up really well for the future and gives you a lot of skills and tools to take forward in whatever life that looks like. But I certainly didn't have a long-term plan. I stayed in and I enjoyed it all. But the time was right when I got out, and I happened to meet my husband the year I decided to get out, but he wasn't a factor.
Okay, no, I see. And he's still there.
I'd made my mind up to leave, and had signed off, as it were, the couple of months before I met him.
That's interesting. These things often come together, don't they? So it's interesting to see those parallel journeys, personal and professional. And did you see it as a kind of calling? And if so, did it feel tough to leave that behind, to sort of move and do something different?
Definitely. I think it's in the blood, obviously. So I think I knew from a very early age that it was something that I would be suited to and I would enjoy. Leaving any career is difficult, and leaving any job is hard, but leaving a career is even harder. And as I said, the army is a way of life. It's not just a job. You move every couple of years, you move location, potentially you certainly move jobs every 2 years, you potentially move countries. So I think, mentally it is a shift, and I was very fortunate. I knew, you already pointed it out, but I'm a planner and I do like to know where I'm heading. So I knew I wanted to do an MBA on leaving, and I had a plan, and I think that made the transition for me very exciting. Whereas I think a lot of people sometimes get quite nervous by making a big change when they don't really have a plan of where they're heading to. So I had my place at business school secured, pretty much as soon as I signed off. I was fortunately paid for the first 3 months during business school because of the way the army's, end of payment process works. So mentally I was in the right place.
And then with the next transition then, so you knew you wanted the MBA and so on, and impressive Big Four consulting and so on. What about the transition, which you're sort of midway through at the moment? How tough was that in terms of going from something that on paper looks very impressive, prestigious, and again, you're leading and you're doing really well. I know you've been very successful in this role. So, how has that change been, deciding then to, in some ways, take a new risk, bet on yourself, and go to work for yourself?
It was on my mind constantly whether to do it from the point when my daughter was 6 months. When you start thinking perhaps about going back to work, if you've taken a fair bit of maternity leave, and it was constantly whirring around in my mind. What do I want? Who am I? All the questions that I thought were solely focused on my career, but actually now I know what I know around matrescence and the transition to motherhood. It was all about the identity split that I had, as I wanted to give 100% to being a mother, but 100% to work. And fundamentally, that's impossible. And therefore, it was a decision that I made as a result of that clearly my role as a mother is perhaps, slightly more important right now than, my career in the corporate space. And it was, I think, a slightly easier decision to make for me because I had 3 children under 4 at that point. So they were all preschoolers, all with clearly being very, very needy at that age. But yes, it was very challenging because friends thought I was stupid. I think my own mum thought maybe I was daft walking away from a clearly senior, well-paid role into the complete unknown. But I haven't looked back this year. I've had no regrets, and I love the opportunities that I've now got and the learnings that I've had this year that I wouldn't have had if I'd stayed in the role.
It's such an interesting one because I had the same experience, and I think my clients again, this moment of, and unfortunately the people around us, they're well-intentioned because obviously our parents and our family and so on, they want us to earn a living and they care for us and so on, but it's really tough when others are sort of saying, are you mad? And so on. But it's very rewarding when you then come out and first of all know that it's the right decision for you. And that's so powerful. And then secondly, of course, when people then see you're happy and thriving and so on, they become very supportive. But I think it's really hard to, I've talked about being sort of the good girl growing up, and we are so dependent on external validation. I'm always still now, to some extent, fall back into that comfort zone of looking for someone else to tell me, yes, Anna, that's the right choice, and so on, so it's both scary and so incredibly empowering to make your own decision and to know that it's right for you. I'm curious to dig into, because obviously the red thread, or also the parallel thread, certainly has been then this matrescence, which you've mentioned, your own, and then supporting women. But can we talk about that? How do you feel your definition of success has evolved from being, I guess, young, single in the army to recognizing that wasn't where you wanted to have children, to having 3 children under 4 and so on? I mean, it's a big topic, and I know I'm sure you could talk for a long time, but in terms of through the lens of redefining success, I guess, how has that experience been for you?
So learning about matrescence was completely life-changing to me, because it put the pieces of the puzzle together of why I was feeling like I was. And it does automatically therefore make you look at success and redefine what success is, because you're looking at your life as a woman through the lens of being a mother. And I, as a coach myself, and have been coached for a number of years, I did a values elicitation exercise on myself about 18 months ago, around the time I was sort of handing my notice in. And it made me really question who I was, my core values, and therefore be able to wanting to live more in alignment with those values. And I think your values change, and I was living in alignment with my values pre-children. I love my career and everything was going fantastically, but I think that big change has made me reassess my values, and therefore I'm now much more intrinsically aware about what motivates me and what I think success is, because of having a deeper awareness of what my values are, what makes me feel proud, which now is again very different to what before. It was being part of an organization, a very well respected organization, being the army and a Big Four, but now I see success as being proud of owning my own business, making that a success, being proud to be a mother of 3, which again I'd never thought I would ever be a mum of 3. I had my first child at 37, so the time bomb was ticking. So yeah, I think the thread of success has always been around making the most of opportunities presented. But I think certainly now it's much more about being very aware of what I want and need, both as a woman and a mother, and therefore being aligned to my values, perhaps closer than I ever have done before.
I love that. And that's interesting. And I had, I'm not even going to remember, I can't do the maths quickly, how old I was when I had my first, but I think a similar age. I feel like I was a geriatric mother, as they so beautifully call it here. And I think both my partner and I had obviously lived a happy, successful life on our own without each other and without children. I think that transition is good because you're so, I was going to say set in your own ways, and that sounds like a negative thing, but you really know who you are, I think, and you have your values and you have your expectations and so on. But that can also make it harder because you have really experienced, I imagine if I'd had kids 20 years ago, it would have been so tough, but of course I would have had more energy, I think. And, I wouldn't have known different in a way. So while we never, regret these things and so on, I'm just curious, is that something around, when you've had that independence and you've been traveling and leading these soldiers and having these incredible experiences, then the sort of transition into suddenly not sleeping and you're trying to keep this little tiny thing alive and so on can be quite a stark contrast, I suppose, coming at a later age in particular.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's more challenging moving into motherhood later on for obviously all the physical aspects, but definitely you said set in your ways. You know who you are, you know what you want, and then suddenly there is this huge turn of emotions and looking at yourself very, very differently. So I definitely think that is a factor to the challenging side of motherhood. I also think there's a big factor in my sort of story about I've had a career in a male-dominated environment for my whole life. So I have very masculine tendencies, masculine energies, and that's just because of who I've been surrounded by, 99% of my working life. And then suddenly becoming a mother, in your late 30s, all those feminine energies, need to come to the fore, your empathy, your support, your kindness, the more softer skill set and strengths, which you in the workplace, especially when you're in a male dominated workplace, perhaps don't get are not as valued, and therefore it's harder to shift in terms of your skill set, as it were, becoming a mother the older you are as well.
One of the exercises that I get my clients to do is thinking about, and it sounds a bit schizophrenic, but the different characters that are within us. And I sort of think that, I can be, and I need to be, and I want to be the confident businesswoman. I am sort of, there's still the adventurous hippie wanderer in there somewhere. I think he maybe isn't always let out these days. There's maybe the central woman, the softer side as well. There's obviously the nurturing mother and so on. And, when you talk about, and again, thinking about success, how do you balance? And it's a big question. So sorry to put you on the spot, but how do you balance those different facets of you? As you said, that you've got the masculine energies, you've got the feminine, you've got the professional ambitions, and the, of course, loving, nurturing aspects too. So, as you said, you can't do 100 plus 100. So how do we do it? Tell us, Katherine, what's the secret?
That is a really a tough question. I think a lot of it comes down to self-awareness. I was speaking to a client yesterday who's realizes that her self-awareness is very low when we started talking about her values. And I was like, if you have raised self-awareness, you know what you can do and you know what you can't do, because you thought about it and made time to think about it. So I think there's something around self-awareness is key to being able to manage everything. And I think there is a big part, and I think it's something why I like change, is I have a growth mindset. And if you have a growth mindset, you can overcome failings easier. You see things as learning opportunities, which I know, but and I think as a mother, if you have that growth mindset, you can overcome some of the challenges that inevitably come with motherhood much easier.
Yeah, that's a great one because
That
of course,
part of answer your question.
yes. I mean, I take notes. So I think the growth mindset's a really interesting one because, of course, we face these challenges and we know there is a way. It's not like, oh, this is so hard, I'm stuck, but it's really looking, as we do in other areas of our lives, I suppose, for solutions. One of the concepts I subscribe to is work-life integration, and what comes to mind is for me that if I can be myself in my work, so I'm talking to you now, I'm literally like talking to you about things that I find fascinating anyway. I'm talking about my work, I'm talking about my kids. It's perfect, and I imagine it's sort of similar to you anyway, because it's the things that you care about personally, you're also earning a living professionally. I'm able to do that, and that allows me. My mum always says, "Why you're so good at transitioning, from teaching a webinar to next minute, like being with the kids, to next minute." And I think if we are being ourselves, our authentic selves, as we say, the closer, as you said, you can be to your values and showing up as a whole person, that makes that transition easier. Not to say that that's the right way, because I know, and I'm sure there are people in the army and there are people in corporate roles, where they have to be a very different person, but bring a different energy, and that can work for them. But I'm just thinking out loud that I think what works for me and a lot is the reason I'm able to be so fluid is because it all kind of works harmoniously, is a bit of an exaggeration, but it certainly works, kind of coherently rather than pulling in different directions, because I think that would be really hard.
I think I agree with what you've just said. I think there's something about trusting yourself as well, though. I think the more you trust yourself to be the good enough mother, to be the employee or the business owner that you want to be, I think it gives you confidence to get through some of the challenges that inevitably happen when you are dealing with all the transitions on a day-to-day basis that we as mothers have to do when you are holding a career down as well as being a mother. So I think trusting yourself is really important.
Yeah, and as we talked about,
sorry, go
ahead.
And probably trying to ignore the judgment and the comparison that so many of us have as working mums, certainly. Just knowing that you are doing what's best for you is also, I think, really, really important, and ignoring what people are saying with regard to how you're bringing up your children specifically, because clearly that's something that everyone has an opinion on, is important.
And I think those two are linked, both, trusting yourself, of course, and then being able to shut out that noise. And then likewise, as we talked about in your career pivot, kind of trusting yourself and not listening to the judgment. Like, the same thing applies with motherhood, parenthood, because I mean, in business, we're constantly getting, you should be doing, I always like webinars, you should be doing group programs, you should be doing, and then it's very easy to be swayed. Oh, I'm doing this wrong, I need to do that, and I need to do all these things. And the same thing in motherhood. Nowhere, I think, is there more judgment and different views on, not giving them ultra processed food, and you shouldn't be doing screen time, and then this, that, and the other, and they should be doing, there are kids at our school who are doing, I don't know, activities every day. They're playing golf and they're doing dance and and I'm sort of struggling just to go to that one activity a week. So it's impossible not to compare yourself. And certainly in business, it's the same, right? On social media, all we do is see very much in front of us, online, offline, how other people are parenting, how other people are working. So I think, again, exactly as you said, the self-awareness, trusting ourselves, and sometimes just kind of shutting out a bit of that and giving us the space to reflect on what we really care about, what matters for us and our families, is so important, so difficult, but so powerful.
Yeah, 100%. And I think to thrive as a mum, and obviously I talk about thriving a lot, I certainly think that those are things that you have to do as a mum. Trusting yourself and trying to minimize that comparison with others.
And speaking of, I guess, thriving as a mum and now with your business, I'm curious, in terms of work-life integration, talk us through sort of, is there a typical day a week? Are you quite fluid? Are you quite structured? I know you said you're quite a planner. So how are you balancing the two, I was going to say, but there's 4, I suppose, work and 3 children, how are you striving for that balance, but how are you, managing the different priorities in your life?
So one of the reasons that I didn't want to go back to my corporate role was that I don't think I could have been successful in a senior leadership role on 3 days a week, which is ultimately what I wanted to do. I'd done 4 days a week when I went back to work after my first child, but 3 days I thought, no, that's perhaps taking it a bit too far. So I work 3 days a week at the moment, and that's what I intended to do. So I get Thursday and Fridays with my two youngest, and have the opportunity therefore to, take them swimming. And I've done that every week since they were, weeks old. Do the playgroup thing, do the mummy stuff, which I have really enjoyed over the course of the last 6 years. I do work evenings. I am perfectly happy with that. It's my passion at the moment, this business. I need to get it off the ground, and working 3 days a week it is challenging enough. But obviously, if you're trying to set something up, then, there is a lot to do. So my husband is very sympathetic, and I'm happy working with him while he's doing something in the same room, but I'll sit on my laptop in an evening. And in terms of, day-to-day structure, I guess, because I'm a planner, I am very much actually really quite enjoy having a 90-day plan where I'm complete control of it. So I have a 90-day plan, I review it, and it's down to a week-by-week basis. So I know, give or take, what I'm going to be doing each week. Clearly, things come in that are different, and you'll have more client calls one week and less the other week or whatever. But in terms of the business development side and working on the business, I know what I'm going to be doing, give or take, each week. And at the moment, my plan goes up till Christmas. I haven't got past January, but I'm on the final leg of this year. And that has been quite refreshing as a business owner, because I'm in control. So I guess that's as much as my plan goes. I don't necessarily have a particular plan per Monday mornings I will do this, that and the other, or whatever. That side of it is fluid. It really depends on what I feel like working on when I haven't got the client calls. I can dictate it, and I find that very empowering and uplifting. And using your brain at the right time. This morning I've been doing a fair bit of writing because I was in the mood for writing. Other times I might be in the mood for working on the website and doing technical stuff, but I can choose what suits me there and then in terms of what my brain capacity can deal with.
And it's that flexible structure, isn't it? And I think 90 days is such a good time, 12 weeks, whatever you want to call it, because it's really sort of long enough to see the impact, but short enough to still stay focused, right? And then, as you say, I've gone through phases, and to be honest, I think it was pre-kids when I was able to do like admin Fridays and write content Tuesdays, whatever it was, and that can work for some. And like you, I'm a bit more. Yesterday morning, it turned out, as you know, I then had a temperature and I wasn't very well, but I wasn't quite feeling it in the morning. And usually a productivity guru would be like, this is what you've got to do first thing. And I just kind of eased into it. I did a little bit of that. So and after a couple of hours, actually, I was sort of on top of things again. So I think I think maybe the theme of this is coming back to trusting yourself. And I find it very hard for people to break free of the 9 to 5. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you didn't quite have that in the army, so it's not as rigidly structured in your brain, but I think we forget that we are our own boss and we can actually decide what we want to do. 3-day work week, fine. Work in the evenings, also fine. Want to work on Sundays, yes. Want to not work on Sundays, it's really up to you. So I think that's a reminder to everybody that you get to make the rules, as long as it then is getting you the results that you want, that it works for the clients that you've chosen to work with, and so on. Obviously, then you can make it work for you and your family.
Definitely. But I also think that having the plan, I'm a very goal-orientated person. I always have been. And I think if you have a plan and a goal of what you want to achieve every 3 months or whatever it might be, it really keeps you focused too. And I think as a new entrepreneur, new business owner, I think that's really, really important, because there's so many things. You can be pulled in multiple directions. There is so much advice, as you've already said, out there in terms of what you should be doing, could be doing, blah, 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 social media pressures. But actually, if you stick with what you want to achieve and stay focused, then it makes it a little easier.
And I think it's really hard to commit and make this big decision for the rest of your life, for the rest of your business. And if you give yourself, okay, just try it for the next 90 days, that takes a bit of the pressure off, right? And then you can always, work with this target client for the next 3 months. If that's not working, you can tweak and so on. So I think that takes the pressure off a little bit as well. I have one more difficult question for you. No, I'm sure it's very much in your wheelhouse, but it's just thinking about if someone's listening to this and they're either at the cusp. I know there was someone at the workshop the other week who was pregnant and who was just about to embark on this transition. So either on the cusp or perhaps actually, and it might be different advice, feeling this kind of pain or more the grief of kind of you know, it's a quick aside without wasting too much time, but the whole butterfly metamorphosis, right? I always say that actually the cocoon is quite a painful process. You're being broken down into protein soup before you can then reconstitute yourself into this beautiful butterfly. It's not just that you go to sleep and you, ta-da, you're a wonderful mother who's, you know, spinning those plates beautifully. So I guess those two scenarios, if someone's at the cusp, or if someone's feeling, mourning a little bit who they were before motherhood, what advice might you offer them? What reassurance or tips could you give?
So I think firstly, embrace change. That's hopefully come across over the course of the last few minutes. Motherhood is a big change, and everyone goes into it thinking, oh, I want to be the same person, and that fundamentally you will change. I certainly didn't think I would change as much. I love my career. I feel I've given up quite a lot in terms of my career, but equally I haven't, because I have looked at things positively and seen motherhood as an opportunity for personal growth and development. And I think more people perhaps doing that would help them in those early stages of motherhood. I think the second thing is you're not alone. All the feelings that you have around feeling isolated, having mum guilt, feeling overwhelmed because you're juggling plates, you're wearing so many hats, you're feeling stretched in all directions, that is normal, but it doesn't have to be like that. There is support out there, and understanding the word matrescence has, as I said, been life-changing for me. And I think the more people that know about that, it helps them in that transition, and to normalize how you're feeling, and get through it quicker as well. Mothers can thrive. You don't have to be stuck in survival mode the whole time. But if you understand that you're not alone, and there is a community of women out there that can support you, be it from local mums in the playgrounds to your family, to professional support, I think that's really advantageous.
Yeah.
I think there's two key things, really.
I love that. Yeah, embracing change, again, that growth mindset, and absolutely not having to struggle through it alone, I think is really key. So Katherine, I think you're quite active on Instagram. Is that the best place to find you? Where can we connect with you and learn more about your work?
So I'm on Instagram at thrive_in_motherhood. I try to post as regularly as I can. My website is thriveinmotherhood.co.uk. And you can find out all about my personal coaching, group coaching, corporate coaching. I'm looking at taking my coaching program into the corporate space next year as well.
Very smart.
All on my website.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was really lovely to hear about both the personal transformation and to dig into some kind of thorny issues, I suppose, but exciting ones too around matrescence. I think it's a new concept for a lot of people. It's sort of did you sorry again for putting you on the spot, but did you say that there was a time, when was it sort of invented? When did we first start using the word matrescence?
The word actually only came into the Cambridge Dictionary in 2020.
Okay, wow.
So it is really new. The word originally was coined back in 1973 by a lady called Dana Raphael, who came up with the term doula, which has stuck. Lots of people doula, but matrescence didn't get any traction.
That's
really
interesting. Okay.
The last sort of 15 years. And my prediction is that the word matrescence will be as big as the word menopause in about 10 years' time. I think we're going through a phase where health and well-being are so much more prioritized. The support to women as a result of the pandemic, needs to be improved, etc. And so I'm optimistic that women will have a better understanding, workplaces will have a better understanding, and there'll be more support available over the coming years.
I hope so. it feels like a paradox, because it really is the biggest change you could possibly imagine, physically, mentally, in your life. And yet, as you say, somehow it's because it's so normal, everybody does it almost, it's such a natural thing people have done for centuries. You sort of think, oh, it must be, I don't know. It's a very interesting one. I'll definitely
it's deemed as big as adolescence.
Well,
and obviously we've all been through adolescence and the challenges that brings.
That's so interesting. No, so again, I hope it sort of shone light on that, and being I'm sure practically useful to some mothers who are in that moment now as well. Looking forward to staying connected and seeing, I know you're at the beginning of kind of this next phase, but I'm sure being the sort of leader of change, you're going to see many more pivots in the future, but really exciting. Thanks again for sharing your career and personal journey, and best of luck with the next phase of your business.
Thanks so much, Anna. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. If you'd like to create your own transition story and escape the 9 to 5 to work for yourself, then come and join us over in the Business Incubator. This is a comprehensive online program and community designed to give you the roadmap that you need to help you figure out what you really want to do, come up with a workable plan, and take the right steps to achieve it. Read more and join us over on onestepoutside.com/9 to 5. That's onestepoutside.com/9 to 5.